All right, welcome in, guys. It is time for the Monday night live stream called Talkin Ball, brought to you by our friend John Donovan over at Longhorn Wealth Management. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Jerry Hamilton. Jerry, it has been a very interesting 24 hours or so, 48 hours, I guess. We are now just 5 days away from Texas taking on Colorado State. You and I, this morning on Coffee and Football, I think it's fair to say that we were what's the right word? Giddy, because football is actually just around the corner for the Longhorns. These Monday night talking ball chats that we're going to have are literally going to be for the fans to ask us questions. We don't always get to answer all of them on the Coffee and Football morning show, and then we are going to all season long have reactions and news and notes from Steve Sarkisian's presser. And then we have Winning Drive. So we thought that you and I would come back on Monday nights, give people an opportunity to ask us questions, talk about whatever they want to talk about. Sark, as I mentioned today, Jerry, went to the podium, talked a little bit about his 2024 Longhorn teams, revealed a few things to us. We'll talk about those, get into it. We think we know who the punter is going to be now. Sounds like it's going to be true freshman Michael Kern, to give you a sense of where I think that position went based on Steve Sarkisian's comments. Talk about other things as well as recruiting. Jerry, big weekend for Texas. Not only Nick Brooks on Friday, but then Jonah Williams on Saturday. We also had news today, sorrowfully, of Edith Royal's passing. The former, I guess the widow of Darrell Royal, passed away this morning at 98 years old. Our thoughts to the Royal family. Our thoughts also going out to Greg Swindell, the former Longhorn pitcher, who was a member of the Longhorn Network baseball coverage team with Keith Moreland. His daughter has been missing since Thursday. The car that she was in has been found in the state of Colorado, but they cannot, or at least as of 3 or 4 hours ago, they had not contacted her or been able to contact her. So without further ado, Jerry, I'm going to say hello to you, let you say your hellos, and then we're going to get to questions. And load it up so you guys get your questions, comments in for us. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about tonight. No holds barred for the Monday night Talking Ball with Jerry Hamilton and myself, Bobby Burton. Jerry, welcome in, buddy.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Glad game weeks here. Felt like a really long off season, and I'm really excited for the young kids at Texas, the young players, the newcomers, but really the freshmen, man, because even the guys that transfer, then they've run out from under a tunnel as a college football player before. Even Trey Moore, they play at Tennessee, right? He's been in the environments. He's been in the arena when he was at UTSA. But for the freshman kids, while they went through spring practice, so if you think about how many kids early enroll now, they get to go through 2 off seasons, essentially, as far as the spring off season, the summer off season workouts, before they ever get to run out from under the tunnel at DKR. So I'm really excited for the freshmen. I think it's going to be awesome for all the newcomers, their parents, their family members. And who would have thunk it? Well, we had what? Out of that top 5 recruiting class, Michael Kern is the starter, the first guy to start a game. It looks like it'll be Michael Kern out of that recruiting class.
Top 5 ranked recruiting class, and you get the punter right, at least, it sounds like. That's good for Jeff Banks and his crew. All right, we're going to start it off and just get going with your questions. Please fill up the chat as much as you'd like to, and we will try to get to them as quickly as possible. I'm going to start with Toby Van Landingham. With us having the 2 edges that we wanted most in this class, and that being Lance Jackson and Smith Orogbo, is Texas still trying to get Javion Hilson? And I'm going to tag this also with something that Blake Jester wrote. Myron Charles and Javion Hilson flip watch. I think there's a lot of talk going on right now because both those young men, Hilson out of Cocoa, Florida, and Charles out of Port Charlotte, are right now committed to Florida State. And Florida State went to Ireland and laid an egg, is the best best way to put it, Jerry. What do you think? Is there more than just talk here, or is there anything else going on?
Well, I wanted to bring up Brandon Ralston's super chat as well because this factors into it. I need an update on Mr. Hilson as FSU pledge. So I'm a little different on this, guys. I don't want emotional flips. It's not good in recruiting. I mean, that's not what you want. You want these guys to come back on a visit. And I actually spoke with Myron Charles for a couple of minutes this afternoon. And look, I think Texas will try to get those guys on campus for a game this year. And remember, Josiah Sharma's flip, he came in late July on that unofficial visit with his mom and made that flip. Myron Charles was supposed to. He didn't come. So I think, look, we've reached this point of the season. One team drops a game, kids are going to flip, right? We'll see what happens. If you guys just look at the way Steve Sarkisian operates, though, I mean, look, if Myron Charles picked up the phone and said, I'm ready to do it, of course. But I think there's a process that comes with this, too. You don't want these guys flipping back and forth on emotion. Because what if Florida State goes out and says, okay, we got to keep these guys so the NIL changes? Well, then they may just flip right back on you. So I think there's a process that goes on here, and we got to let that process play out a little bit before we start counting guys as flips. That's not really the way Sark operates.
I do think they need to get him back on campus because you want it to stick.
Yes.
Right. That's the whole idea behind it. And the bigger question to me is, do they want Javion Hilson as badly as they need some other positions in this recruiting class? Now, here's another thing that we need to start thinking about when we start talking about numbers, Jerry Hamilton. They could be going up to 105. What does that do with your recruiting class looks from here on? Are they
Georgia,
still be?
I'll say this, Bobby. Georgia just offered Joseph Mbaktu, the D lineman committed to Florida from Grayson. They're throwing out D line offers like candy, so they're already planning on it. So that's that is a good point. I mean, what does Texas do there? And I think they're going to make push on the defensive line for a couple extra guys.
Yeah, and not necessarily edge though. Right? Defensive line, which is a little bit different. So Hilson, I get it, and he may be a special player that Texas wants. I can't tell you that for sure right now, but defensive line, I think, takes priority right now. All right, going to Joe Z. Thanks for that question, guys. It was a good one to start us off and gives you a glimpse or at least a taste of what we're going to try to do each and every Monday night here on Talkin' Ball. Joe Z. Bobby, Jerry, I'm calling my shot. North Dakota State or San Diego State will upset Colorado or Oklahoma State. I'm going to say this before, Jerry, you go to yours. I think it's much more unlikely that Colorado gets upset than Oklahoma State. And there are two reasons for that. One, Colorado has a really good quarterback. It's going to be hard to beat them. You're going to have to just flat out outscore them. That's going to be hard. Whereas Oklahoma State, even though they have Ollie Gordon, they do have Alan Bowman back, but Mike Gundy is not at his best early in the season. He's more of that ultimate counterpuncher, right, Jerry? So I could see more of the Oklahoma State being susceptible early. What do you think, Jerry?
I think the best thing Mike Gundy has going for him this year is that butt whipping they took against South Alabama last year.
Early,
Now, there's a difference. Ollie Gordon was coming out of the doghouse, kind of. He wasn't a hadn't a practice player. They hadn't decided on a quarterback. They were rotating three, including one that lived in the same house growing up, which presents its own issues. So I think Oklahoma State's a much more settled team this year. So I actually think they're a little less susceptible because Mike Gundy will be throwing out that South Alabama 33-7 embarrassment last year that happened early in the season. With Colorado, I mean, look, I mean, I think Colorado has too many touchdown scores in that game. But I will say this, that will be a glimpse into the Colorado season, I think, because they have a very difficult Big 12 schedule. They play all the ranked teams, and those are teams that have really good quarterbacks, and Utah is very physical. They face some really good teams, some really good coaches at Kansas State who's going to be physical. So I think Colorado has too much firepower, just too many guys. Travis Hunter could score 3 touchdowns in that game, and that's it, right? And Shooter Sanders can make 2 or 3 plays, put 2 or 3 touchdowns on the board, and that's the difference. But it's going to be interesting to see Colorado's personnel in that game to see what you think versus the Big 12 schedule they have in front of them.
All right, we'll keep going here. That's pretty good stuff there, Jerry, because if you think about it, there are going to be some upsets. Georgia Tech taking Florida State. I don't want to say to the woodshed because it wasn't some 25-point, 30-point victory, but they physically beat up Florida State, Jerry.
Yeah.
And we'll see if that is a real thing that we see in other games. For example, is North Dakota State, which is a 1AA powerhouse, essentially, are they more physical than a Colorado team that can throw the ball a lot and move it? Has the skill talent, but not necessarily the depth on either line. That could be more interesting, maybe, than I gave it.
That's what I'm looking. That's what I'm looking to. I don't really care about the final score. Obviously, if there's an upset, the press conference is going to be off the charts. But even if Colorado wins that game, what do they look like up front? Because that's going to kind of give you a glimpse into the rest of their season in the Big 12. Because they got Oak State, they got Utah, they got K-State, they got them all. They got everybody this year on their schedule that's good in the Big 12. So, and those are some teams that are going to be physical with them. So that'll be interesting. By the way, I want to answer this one real quick, Bobby. Nathan asked, Dallas Wilson visiting Florida this weekend. Seems to be he'll be taking other visits. Yeah, look, with Khalil Lockett in the boat, if Jamie French commits to Texas on the 30th, I think more of a speed wide receiver would be a third receiver in this class. Could you turn down Dallas Wilson? That'd be tough. But with Khalil Lockett, and if Jamie French commits, I think that gets a little tougher at outside receiver. I think you need that speed guy as your third receiver in the class. But I will say this. That's why that's a huge game in Gainesville this weekend, because Miami at Florida, there's going to be a ton of recruits at that game. And both those staffs are calling these kids this week, and they're all doing their recruiting pitches. And that the loser of that game they take a shot in recruiting, especially with some of those guys you're trying to get back on. DJ Pickett, obviously the LSU commit, one of the top defensive backs in the country from Zephyr Hills. He'll be at the Florida game too. That's a game that's going to attract a lot of kids to it. So really big opportunity for both those schools this weekend. Mainly Florida hosting them.
Yeah, don't forget about Michael Terry at receiver either, guys, because that's where he absolutely wants to play. All right, let's say thanks real quick to our sponsor, and then we'll get back to questions. John Donovan, president of Longhorn Wealth Management Group, is a proud Texas Ex's Life member whose wife and 6 siblings are all UT grads as well. It's this rich family tradition that explains why John branded his firm Longhorn Wealth and has dedicated his firm to providing total wealth management for Texas alums, employees, family, and friends. As we approach the home opener for our Longhorns this Saturday, please remember to get your own home's financial affairs in order by reaching out to John for a free 90-minute consultation, no strings attached, to explore how Longhorn Wealth can analyze and evaluate your financial landscape. Simply call John and his team, 972-707-4900, or reach out at longhornwealth.net to schedule your free consultation. John will be in Austin for the UT Colorado State game on Saturday and hopes to see many of you there as well. 100,000 plus likely this weekend. All right, let's go to Ashley real quick. I got to get Ashley's question in here because she's next. Jerry, she wants to know how many more silence we got, Jerry Hamilton.
At least one.
There you go. All right, Ashley. That's good. What did you have, Jerry? What you want to talk about?
Stephen Houston and Zach were having a conversation in the chat, and I want to agree. For the people that are asking about Javion Hilson, we didn't really get this. If a really good player from Florida wants to be at Texas, you got to take the kid from the state of Florida. Bottom line, for me, I 100% agree with this. I want more offers in Georgia and Florida in every class moving forward. Every class. I've gone down the list of this. There's 22. And I was just talking to a good friend in this business that knows state of Georgia, covers Georgia last night. And it's an unbelievable defensive line year in Georgia. I mean, there are guys that Georgia knows are good enough to play for them. They just can't take from a numbers perspective. Georgia's going to have defensive line classes like that every couple of years, it feels like, for me moving forward. And that's in Metro Atlanta, that's South Georgia. Florida, big bodies in the north part of Florida, Tampa corridor, that I-4 corridor, up into the northern part of the state. Dayton, Broward, maybe you don't mess around as much. You could mess around and find out down there a little bit in recruiting. So, but I think Orlando, Tampa, up to Jacksonville, great areas for Texas to recruit. And to Stephen and Zach's point, their discussion they're having, if Javion Hilson, you could get him back on campus and he wanted to flip, you can't turn him down. No way.
All right. This question coming in from Dwayne Frakes. Is there a shakeup on the OL? I'm going to tell you, Cole Hudson and Nato Omiozulu have made it difficult. In particular, they've made it difficult on two people. One is Kyle Flood, who's going to have to make this decision, and two is DJ Campbell, who has not had the best fall camp to this point. And I'm not saying that he's out of favor or anything like that, but I do think that the competition, a lot of people were saying, oh, well, Nato or Cole might beat out Hayden Connor. They weren't really anticipating them perhaps beating out DJ Campbell. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm just putting that out there because I've been doing this too long. I've heard too many good things about both Nato and Cole Hudson, and I've heard some things that make me wonder a little bit about where everything's at with mentioned earlier. So we'll see where that goes exactly. Todd Lacey with this one, Jerry, for us. How much 10, 11, and 12 personnel will Sark run? Any 21 personnel? Just to give people that are brand new to the chat and brand new to football vernacular, the personnel groupings are number of running backs first, number of tight ends second. So 10 personnel is one running back, no tight ends, 11, 1 and 1, 12, one running back, two tight ends, etc. 21, obviously, two running backs, one tight end. Jerry, how much do you think they're going to run of each? Last year, Rod and CJ are fond of saying that the pony package, which is the two-back set, was Texas's most successful set. But with the absence, really, of Cedric Baxter now, does that change? Because your top two backs are not lead blockers on any kind of play, really. So what do you think? What's the proper mix if Todd Lacey's got his question there?
I was told all late spring, all summer that Texas was going to play more 21 personnel in the SEC against the schedule they're going to face with Cedric Baxter and Blue. Obviously, Cedric Baxter is now out for the season. So I do think you'll naturally see less of that because I think that was a really good mix for that 21 personnel. I'm not sure you can recreate that mix necessarily. Look, a lot of that will depend on what Jarrett Gibson looks like early in the season too, I think. If Jarrett Gibson really hits the field and maybe advances quickly, and I'm not talking running the football, but I'm talking everything outside of that. If he advances quickly, then I think Sark wants to run more 21 personnel against this schedule and in the SEC. But you're not just going to pound your head against the wall to do it if you don't have the correct personnel to run it as successful as you want to. So that's going to have to – I think Jarrett Gibson is going to be very key in that, to your point, Bobby. And we'll see. Not that Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner can't do it. I'm not saying that. But it's definitely a difference from what Cedric Baxter and Jaden Blue could do because you can motion Jaden Blue. You could do so many things with him. And you knew you had a football intelligence off the chart as a pass blocker, as a lead from the running back position, a lead blocker, another guy that you could put in motion line him out wide, throw the ball to him like Texas did against Alabama. So you had two pass catching weapons. One of those guys also was your best pass pro guy by far, and your guy that was your best inside runner as well. So that it's going to be different. I think a lot of 12 personnel, Black, but Black, it may be 12 personnel softly defined, but I'm not sure Black is really at sometimes even going to be looked at it lining up as a tight end in the Texas.
He will be a mismatch is the idea there, Jerry, right? You count him as a tight end, but he may be lined up as a wide receiver. And so he gives your defense problems. It puts them in, gives them a conundrum to try to solve a riddle, so to speak. And you don't know really which way they're going to go. Hey, Slick Brook has a question. Are we getting our hopes up with Jonah Williams, the ball high defensive back who committed to Texas on Saturday? I don't think he'll play a down of college football. The kid is too talented in baseball. Why would he gamble his baseball career by playing football? Thoughts? And I'll just answer with the obvious. Maybe he prefers football.
That was the first time he openly publicly did something that said, I prefer football. So that was the thing. If you graduate from high school in December, you're bypassing the major league draft because you're going to go be a scholarship athlete at the University of Texas. So that's him making a college football and baseball decision. But look, I was on that boat for a long time, especially with the July he had, hitting 94 off the mound, throwing 90 in his 100th pitch out in late July before that Texas visit in that wooden bat tournament, which he swung it better the second half of that tournament, the second half of July. There was a lot of talk that if he just continues on that path and he has a great spring as a high school baseball player, that he's going to shoot up the draft boards. And so he kind of made a Kyler Murray decision in a way. And obviously Kyler was different because he went top 10 in the draft and was taking a different path. But ultimately, Kyler loved football more than baseball. And I think Jonah's kind of telling us that, is telling us that with this decision to graduate early from December. It was funny, though, when we talked to the Galveston Ballhead baseball coach, Bobby, during the live stream. For those that didn't see it, he's not ready to throw in the towel yet.
No, he wants Jonah to come back for spring practice with him.
Yeah, he's like, if that decision remains the same. So there's going to be a lot of pull. And I'm not saying the Galveston ball coach is pulling on him, but, look, he's in the classes. He's planning to graduate in December. If he does, he's done with the draft for 3 years. He will be a college football and baseball player at Texas. That's currently his plan.
Can't ask for more commitment than that. Jerry, this one's a good one from Tom Doyle. Thanks, by the way, Slick Rick, for the super chat. Jerry and Bobby, since you have been evaluating players for many years, do you ever go back and see how they turned out compared to your initial evaluations? Does it change the way you evaluate? So I have been doing it a long time. I haven't done it as my sole vocation for about 15 years, though. Jerry's continued on doing it. I've actually got into management and all this other stuff with Rivals and 24/7, et cetera. But I will say this, as I've grown older, and Jerry, you can vouch for me with this. You learn that certain things are non-starters. Lack of effort, lack of football toughness. Those things just don't translate to ever being any good. Now, you can be a little bit lazy, but still be football tough.
Right.
But both combined, that's a no-go. And so you could be, frankly, I'll give you a name of a guy that actually was not a bad player, but he won 4 events in the state track meet in the 1990s. Toya Jones out of Refugio. Okay. He was 6'2", 210 pounds, and I think won the state 100 and 200 in long jump.
Yeah.
Okay. That's like the prototype, right? You know what he didn't do? He never played through contact in high school football. He always, in Toya Jones is a good person. There's nothing wrong with this, but he was never going to be a great player because he was never a great player to start with. He didn't show that on a football field. And I think you have to believe your eyes when you see somebody do things that you think are going to translate later. And if they don't have football toughness, you don't get tougher as you play football more. It just doesn't work that way. So, yes, and I will add this. Those same things that I just talked about are part of the reason why I would have ranked Jaden Jackson over David Stone, the IMG defensive lineman that both signed with Oklahoma over the last year. Texas was after Jaden Jackson. I said I liked him better than David Stone because he was more of a football player. David Stone was more this Greek statue, kind of statuesque, perfect model of what a defensive lineman should be. But Jaden Jackson was the one that made all the plays. And I don't know if y'all saw it today or not, but Oklahoma released its depth chart today. And Jaden Jackson, as a true freshman, is first string. The same David Stone that was ranked higher by most folks was third string.
And recruited him to Oklahoma when they play the same position, though.
Yeah. And so what you learned is to trust your eyes, and some things are non-negotiable. Being football tough is one of those. Being lazy and not caring is another. There's a difference between laziness and not caring. But Jerry, what about you? That's a great question, Tom. Appreciate it.
So there's a couple of things for me. We went through this period of time a decade ago where we would just say, big, long-limbed athlete, good athlete, we'll just make him an outside linebacker. Doesn't work that way. I mean, if a guy has an offensive mind and is not going to become a physical defender, then defense isn't going to work for him. It takes a real mentality to play defense. And just because a guy's 6'2", 220 and runs 10.8, say, and has an 80-inch wing, we'll just make him an outside linebacker. Okay, what if he doesn't want to play defense? It's not going to work. I mean, that's just not going to work. Or it'll take years for that guy to come develop. And that's just, those are rare. The other thing is, for me, running back and linebacker, but running back's easy. Linebacker and running back, the two most instinctive positions in football, I think. Hey, quarterback's different. Okay, that's always by itself. And then safety may be third in that. But, again, the linebackers. It's linebackers are just say, this guy will be a great middle linebacker. Okay. Only if he has instincts. Like when we used to do when I was at ESPN Under Armour, we ran the RL Ray Lewis 52 camp, and we bring in like 40 of the best linebackers in high school football in a couple of classes. And Ray Lewis would get them. He would teach the triangle. That's it. Just that read, boom, boom, boom. It would be the triangle drill. Read the triangle, ring the triangle. And it was pretty easy when they got on the board with Ray Lewis, and then they got out and got into drills, who actually could understand what he was saying and take it to the field, process it, and instinctively kind of pick up what he said, understand it, and then go boom, put it onto the field. Linebacker is a very instinctive position for me, especially on the interior. So that would be another one. From watching kids in person, and I can't tell my best story because it's just I can't do it. But I've often said I like to go to a game. I like to go to practices. And then maybe I like to go to a game where maybe these guys are all so good they rarely face adversity on Friday nights. Now, you can get into a Duncanville DeSoto game and you can see some things. But sometimes I like to go watch a kid if I think they may lose a game. Not to watch him lose. How does he react to it? Is he still coachable? Is he a teammate? Does he sit by himself and sulk if things aren't going? Those little things to me, are you call them red flags. I don't want to say red flags, but can keep you from maximizing your talent, because all these guys are in a race to maximize their talent. Outside of the Adrian Petersons, the Patrick Petersons, and a few of those guys, right? Everything's a race to maximize their talent. I don't care if a guy's ranked 50th that plays the same position as the guy ranked 250th. there's not the athletic disparity is not so great that the guy ranked 250th can't be better than the guy ranked 50th if he maximizes his talent and this guy does not. So I kind of look for things that might give me a glimpse if the guy's going to maximize his talent. Now, it's not 100%, but it is helpful to look for those things.
Laziness or not caring and football toughness or lack of it are two of those things. That's what you're talking about, really. Not there are many more, to your point. Not being a good teammate, sulking instead of actually trying to improve, those sorts of things.
I will say
okay.
Justin
Garbo has something real quick. Are y'all speaking at the Little Woodrow's Wednesday, correct? No, it is Thursday. Justin, it will be Thursday down in Webster, Texas. Jerry and I will be out there. Also from Justin, a super chat. With Aiden Anding going to LSU, who are the top guys y'all think Texas will go after? And how many more DBs will Texas try to add to the class? They definitely need another corner in this class for sure, Jerry. I'm not sure they have to have another safety, but they got to get another corner in this class.
Yeah, I think so. Three, probably likely four would be the ideal number. Second safety and a second corner in this class, or a nickel. So we'll see which way that goes. But I think the number for sure is three. Like to get four.
Yep. And who do you see them going after? I mean, it's a couple people. I mean,
I think Sarkis.
Devin Sanchez.
Yeah, I think Sarkis is just going to go big game hunting at corner. You know, the Devin Sanchez's of the world, the Dejon Lee out of Mission Viejo committed to Bama. You know, your Dorian Brews committed to Oregon. Maybe a weird one, a Naheem Offord committed to Ohio State, who people thought was going to flip to Oregon. You know, go after guys like that. But, you know, look, those until those guys get on campus, we're just talking about names. They got to get on campus.
Joe Z has one for us. Jerry, if Jamie French chooses Texas on Friday, you or Bobby has to send me Manscaped product for you bullying me on recruiting this year. Yeah, we've been bullying him.
Well, give me your address in Eugene, Oregon. We'll get it to you.
There you go. Hey, VFL TexX, Tennessee has already offered Jason Witten's son in the 2027 class. Of course, Witten, I think, in the Hall of Honor at the University of Tennessee. Do y'all think Texas will offer him as well? What do you know about Jason Witten's son, Jerry?
Not a lot yet. I mean, obviously, he's a really talented kid, but I don't know enough to speak on that yet. But I will be watching him this season.
Where is he at? What high school is he at?
Well, Jason Witten's the coach at Argyle Christian.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's got some good players over there at Argyle Christian. Hey, I wanted to read this one because this one was actually pretty funny, and I'm not going to tell the who. This was not the story I was telling, but I forgot this on quarterbacks, and it's so true, Bobby. This is a big one I've taken. Is, you know, when I went to a Georgia camp years ago when I was doing this nationally, Mike Bobo was measuring quarterbacks' hands when they were walking into camp, and I asked Bobo, I was like, hey, I want to measure my hands just so I know, because I shake these kids' hands, and I was like 9 5/8 inch hands. I said, okay, thanks. So now I know how big my hand is. So the first thing I do when I meet a quarterback is I shake his hand and put my hand up to his, right? Because 9 inches is the magic number a lot of times. It doesn't mean it's 100%, but that's a big number as far as NFL draft and all that stuff. But one thing I did I can't remember, was that over a decade ago? Right around there now, is I went to see one of the guys that was a very highly ranked quarterback and was thought to be a great quarterback. And I literally went up to shake his hand. He gave me a dead fish handshake and looked at the ground. And I literally remember walking away saying, this guy can't do it. Not at the Texas or Alabama or that there was not that confidence that guy carried himself with that day. I went to see another guy the next day. He shook my hand. He pulled me in for hugs, said, thanks for being here. I can't wait to watch. You can watch us practice basketball today. You're going to come back this season for a game, right? It was like two totally different guys. One guy went on to be an all-conference player. The other guy obviously did not. So there's a little something there with quarterbacks too that you really it's big to actually meet those guys, have a conversation with those guys.
Thanks, Ryan, for that comment. And thanks also to this comment from Reese Brewer. I just want to say thank you to OTF and everyone involved. Y'all put a lot of work into this. Yes, we do, Reese, and we appreciate people like yourself, all the folks out there. I mean, I see so many familiar names in these chats. that you guys have become a little bit like a second family to us. Jerry and I try to dig in on a little bit with you guys every so often just to make fun, because some people have favorite players, et cetera, and always asking about one player or another. And we just like to have fun. And we appreciate you guys coming and joining us each and every time you do. It's really good stuff. Speaking of one of those guys that I've met before, Rob Enfield says 114 hours away now from game one, Colorado State, Jerry. We should enjoy that one. All right. Also, here's one for us. Jerry, is there any chance from Zach Delgado, who's one of those guys that we talk about, is there any chance Texas gets back in on Jabari Antoine out of Louisiana or Kobe Sellers out of Pearland? Those kind of guys. Sellers, I think, committed. Is he committed to A&M right now? Yeah. Antoine to Miami after originally being committed to LSU. What about those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see on a Kobe Sellers. I mean, nothing that's jumped out right now. I'll say that nothing that's jumped out right now. And I haven't heard Antoine at all to this point. Doesn't mean something can't happen, but I'm not sure he's true corner at the end of the day. Hey, Victor Santiago's got one I want to hit on, Bobby.
Go for it. Spread is currently 32.5.
I'm down a point.
Will we cover? We rarely do, especially early. I want to say this, and you can have your say. Sark talked about this year. He wants a better first game performance than he got a year ago. Way too many false starts against Rice. Didn't really put him away the way he wanted to and get young guys into the game on offense like he wanted to. So Victor's not inaccurate here. Will we cover? We rarely do, especially early in the year. What do you think, Jerry?
I think if it doesn't rain, Texas covers. If it's a hot game and a clean weather game, I think, and it may be late. It may be tongues dragging late third quarter for Colorado State, and here comes this guy from New Orleans and throws a couple of touchdowns, and it gets you over the top, right? But I think if it's a clean weather game and hot as it's supposed to be, I think that's trouble for Colorado State midway through the third quarter and in the fourth quarter. I think that's the difference in that game. And by the way, from a matchup standpoint, somebody mentioned Armani Winfield starting, obviously decommitted from Texas at halftime of a game, which might have been a portal sign of the future. Signed with Baylor, jumped to the portal, obviously now at Colorado State starting, one of their three starting wide receivers. Good player. It can really track a football. But look, Colorado State's offensive tackles against the numbers of edge rushers that Texas has is the big one for me. And then two, they lost three key interior defensive linemen. And I watched a little bit of Jay Norvell's press conference today, and that was one of the points he talked about is running the football, finding a way to effectively run the football against Texas Saturday, they think is a key, because they know they can't just be they have to establish some sort of run game, and then stopping the run against Texas offensive line and that Steve Sarkisian scheme. I think that's going to be an issue for Colorado State in this game on the defensive front. I think Wilson, I think it is a really good linebacker. They lost their other good linebacker to the NFL. Their safeties are very good players at Colorado State. One of those guys will probably play in the league, but interior-wise on the defensive front, what can they hang with Texas? And can those offensive tackles hold up over the course of a game? The problem the Colorado State offensive tackle to me have Saturday is, all right, Barron Sorrell and Trey Moore, they start the game, or Ethan Burke, whatever happens. And okay, they have to withstand those guys. Well, then what happens next? Well, you see Colin Simmons, who the heck is this guy? And then you've already played 15 snaps, and this guy's firing off the edge with twitch. And those things wear on offensive tackles. That depth at that position that can get after your offensive tackles, they put a lot of pressure on you as the game moves along. I think midway through third, fourth quarter, it's going to be Katie bar the door time.
Jerry, this one's a good question for C. Gaddis. Jerry, Bobby, what do you find are similarities in talent that translate to college from smaller high schools in Texas? The biggest thing I worry about in small school players is their physicality level has to be amped up a significantly bigger level than from going a 5A or a 6A school into college. Now that it's still a huge leap, right? But it seems like it's even a bigger leap from lower classifications into college. I'll give you an example. Brennan Thompson is one of those. Young man out of Spearman, Texas, 2A school up in the Panhandle, went to Texas. He didn't really find time because he wasn't necessarily, he's just not built physically to be that guy yet, and had been a track guy. Two years later, after some seasoning, transfers to LSU or to OU. He might be a player for the Sooners, but that takes longer. So that is the thing that it's not a similarity that works, but it's one that I see quite often that worries me, I guess. What do you have to say separate from that, Jerry?
Instincts. The instinctive football players, they translate very well. The guys who maybe aren't the instinctive players or more of the prospects, I think that takes those guys a little bit more time from a competition standpoint and a development standpoint, that frame standpoint, building that up as well. But the crazy thing about the state of Texas, guys, a large percentage of the best running backs this state's ever produced came from small high schools in East Texas. So the instinctive guys, David Overstreet, Billy Sims. I mean, you go down the list. I mean, of the running backs. I mean, we could go on for days about these.
Rodney Thomas was from Groveton.
Rodney Thomas. Those instinctive guys carry over immediately. If you find Earl Thomas, a 3A guy. Now, he played all over the place, but he was a very instinctive football player at safety, which you may not have been able to see necessarily in high school, but he was, because he played more running back, corner, and whatever else. But, man, just think about the running backs. Adrian Peterson. I mean, just think about all the running backs that have come out of Texas and that played at smaller schools in East Texas. And there's a list of many, many NFL players and some award winners.
It is what it is there. All right, this one from Mike Gosnell. Jerry, Bobby, how has the advent of Hudl,
awesome question,
max preps affected the trajectory of programs like Virginia Tech, Miami, Nebraska, all former powerhouses lost in the shuffle? I'll say this: max preps is a 0.
Yeah.
Hudl is a 100 on a scale of 100.
I've said the two programs hit the most when YouTube videos started popping, and then Hudl were Virginia and Virginia Tech.
Oh, and Miami.
Yeah. Well, Miami
wasn't anymore down in South Florida either.
Yeah, was Miami more though because kids 7-on-7 kids got out and started seeing the world though? Like, how many guys, Bobby, did you cover that Frank Beamer hid in Virginia that nobody knew about because nobody's gone?
How about Michael Vick coming down to Virginia Tech and Syracuse?
Yeah.
I mean, and frankly, those were two of his bigger offers.
Yep. I mean, so there were so many smaller town Virginia guys that Frank Beamer signed and ended up being like second, third round NFL draft picks, right? Now those guys go to Ohio State and Penn State. They're screwed. I mean, now I say that, and they got 20 starters back, and the very hilarious Pat McAfee picked them to be a college football playoff. They're kind of a trendy pick in the ACC, but that state gets just raided now by Ohio State, Penn State, especially James Alabama, FSU. I mean, that changed the world in the state of Virginia. To me, that state was hit the hardest.
I'm thinking whether or not I agree with you on the Miami conversation. I definitely agree with you on Virginia Tech and Virginia getting the bad end of the stick with Hudl, because all of those when those Hudl tapes went up, good luck keeping those guys.
And then they put them on their Twitters, right? And then it's over.
Yeah. I think Miami was really hurt by that too, though, Jerry. I really do. And I think, I used to go down to Miami every year. Every single year I would go down there and I'd spend a week and a half. And I would go to Miami Northwestern, Killian, and go Cape Coral and go up and down Dade, Broward, and see all those guys. Miami Senior. I mean, just all these schools. And I can't tell you how many guys were there that were Division I players. It was like there were 3 or 4 North Shores.
Yes.
Or 3 or 4, and I don't want to say Duncanville because Duncanville's absurdly talented right now. There weren't 3 or 4 Duncanvilles. But literally there were 6 to 7 to 8, and they had every position except quarterback down there. I mean, you could find a wide receiver, you could find a cornerback, you could find a linebacker, a defensive tackle. You couldn't find quarterbacks. Not usually. Teddy Bridgewater was an exception. But I thought that whenever the guy that ran 4.4 at Miami Northwestern got recruited by, I don't know, Virginia, or not, by North Carolina, when before North Carolina would have never, he would have ended up at South Florida or Florida Atlantic or one of those places.
Yeah.
And UCF. One of those places would have got him. Instead, he ends up at North Carolina or, I don't know, Minnesota for all we know, or Iowa State because of Hudl. That really happened in my opinion.
I've often said about Florida, because obviously I lived down there for a few years when I was doing this job nationally. I jokingly, but kind of not a joke, say I've never been in a high school where somebody didn't run 4.5 in the state of Florida. And those kids are physical football players. They have a want to get out element to them. The other thing, the crazy story about how much talent there is down there in Dayton Broward is when I was with ESPN Under Armour, I went to Monarch High School, not a school that puts out a lot of guys. And I walk out there, and I knew about Calvin Ridley, right? But I go out there to a practice field, grass practice field up to the ankles. And it was the receivers in line were Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, and Caven Ridley at Monarch High School. All 3 drafted, 2 first-rounders. Obviously, they ended up transferring to Deerfield Beach because, it's a wild, wild west down there when coaches change jobs. But, there is so much talent down there. I'm with you. I think Hudl. I also think the 7-on-7 component as well with that. I think there's a couple of components there. Because if you watch those old 30 for 30s, it's obvious those kids had never been anywhere when you hear them talk. They've never been anywhere outside of the state of Florida, ever.
That's fair. I remember going on a trip with Vernon Carey out of Miami Northwestern, offensive lineman. His son ended up being one of the top basketball prospects in the country. I think he's in the NBA now or whatever. And we flew Vernon Carey to Maui, Hawaii to participate in the Rivals.com Aloha Bowl. We sponsored a bowl game out there, and we brought all of the recruits out there to be awarded their, whatever. And Vernon Carey said, "This is my first time going to the beach."
Yeah.
He's from Miami Northwestern. So talk about not never getting out. He'd never been to the beach, he said. And he lived in Miami. So you take it for what it means. Hey, this one, let's go to UT Tyler guy. We've been great in first halves under Sark, but second half, not so much. Will Quinn's experience help with that, with good decisions? I think it will. I am reminded of this. TCU. We're 5 days away, right? And so some people are doing highlights of number 5s, et cetera, today. And one of those plays was Adonai Mitchell's, who wore number 5 last year, his third down catch against TCU, Jerry. Well, they had a stat up on the screen before that play that Texas was 0 for 4 in the second half on third downs prior to that play. So I hear you. I actually think Sark was better in second halves last year and worse isn't the right word, but not as good as he had been in the first half in previous years. So that's my take on that. I think that it's been hit or miss a little bit. But I do think Quinn's experience will help with performance in both halves, hopefully. All right, let's keep going here. Brandon Ralston says, "Hey Jerry, I need an update on the Raptor." That's going to be Derek Williams. Also asking about someone earlier was asking about Xavier Filsaime, the true freshman at safety. Give us an update on Williams, Filsaime, and the guys over at safety.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me with Williams, there's two things. On the field, I think it's making plays on the ball will be the next big step for him. I think finding his voice. You know, we were at the first day they put the defensive headsets in the practice we were at. He was one of the three guys that we noticed that did not have their helmet when they got off the bus, which meant they had a headset on. It was Anthony Hill, Jalen Gilbo, and Derek Williams that day. And, you know, I think the big thing for him is finding his voice, being that vocal guy at the safety position. And maybe that comes next year for him. I don't have that answer. We're going to have to see. But I do think to this point, maybe that is a big step before a play, everything that goes into the game for him. And then on the field, I think it's making more plays on the ball. He's going to be an improved player as a sophomore. There's no doubt about that. I think the big key for him being a potential three-and-done guy, like I think Sarkisian, the staff, a lot of people thought he was when he was being recruited, is going to be how many plays is he going to make on the ball the next 2 years. Because I think playing downhill, he's going to be really good. So I think finding the voice and then I think making plays on the ball are going to be key for him.
Okay. Got a couple time for a couple more questions tonight. Jerry, I want to, one that I keep going back to and thinking about as I'm looking through some questions and trying to pick out which one I go to next. But I'm sitting here thinking about some things that Sark said today and really trying to, pick through where this team is at. He is the eternal optimist or he really likes this team. Like, you know what? You see what I'm saying? Do you not get that sense almost every time you've talked? Like, he did not sound this way 4 years ago or even 3 years ago. But the last 2 years, he has said he has liked this team almost every single time. And so either you believe him because he's kind of been right to this point, or you think he's just trying to speak something into existence. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think he really likes this team. Now, does that mean this team offensively at Michigan's going to be as good as the team offensively was at Alabama? And I think that may take a little bit more time, especially with the injuries, right? But it's an experienced offensive line, third-year quarterback. There's a lot of things that are going with this. But the one thing that stuck out to me, outside of my opinion on this team, is what Sark said in SEC media days. He said, when I first got to Texas, the question was about leadership. He said, we had Bijan and we had Roschon. Then the next year, we had like 5 leaders. He said, this year, I feel like we've got 25 leaders. Well, that's a guy who's confident in the team he's recruited and built. You don't say those things unless you're confident in your locker room and the guys you brought into this program. That's a pretty big statement to make. But before he said that, the thing with me with this team was, I think the best teams to coach are the team that almost climbed the mountaintop but didn't quite get there. Because your messaging is really resonates with those teams. Because they got a taste, but they still left with disappointment. No different than Bond and Nyblack losing to Michigan in overtime. Those guys and guys on the Texas team have all been really close to something special. And they didn't quite get there. Those are great teams to coach for me, as long as the locker room stays tight-knit and that component's there. And then you bring in the Silas Boldens of the world, who had a pretty good season at Oregon State, but this is a totally different – he had a really good season with a pretty good Oregon State team is what I meant to say. Now he's on a different platform. A Trey Moore is on a different platform. A Matthew Golden coming from Houston is on a different platform. So you have a good mix of a team that was really good last year but still left either with tears in their eyes or thinking that was a game we could have won, and we didn't get it done. Same for the Bama guys. And then you have guys coming in for an opportunity through the portal. That's a pretty good combination if you're an experienced football team. So we'll see how they play. in 2 weeks at Michigan. But man, if you're a coach, you like the makeup of that team.
This guy Cotton has this to say: best team to coach is one you don't have to coach all the time. Player-led team is awesome. Good comment, Cotton. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and you can only do that if you got multiple leaders and really good leadership, because your one leader in the team isn't always going to be there. He may have class. He may not be in the locker room at certain times. You got to have a bunch of those guys for me.
All right, we're going to have a couple more questions here. I want to say thanks one final time to our sponsor, John Donovan, President, Longhorn Wealth Management. As a proud UT alum, John served 15 years as a Dallas, Texas Exes board member, and he's now helping lead the build-out of the Collin County Texas Exes chapter. John's a certified financial planner with more than 30 years of experience and expertise in helping Longhorn families maximize their wealth, minimize their taxes, and secure their legacy. To discuss strategies for how you can truly secure your overall financial future, schedule your own free 90-minute consultation with John Donovan by simply calling Longhorn Wealth 972-707-4900 or going online at www.longhornwealth.net. John will be in Austin for the Longhorns home opener on Saturday and hopes to see you all there. Says hook 'em from John Donovan to the rest of the Longhorns.
Bobby, I got one I want to bring up because I think this is one hell of a great comment.
Go for it.
Horns. Fans of elite teams will have to get more comfortable with multiple lost seasons going forward, given the consolidation of conferences. I think this is a great, great comment because you can go 9-3 and get in the playoff and be a really good football team. And the key, one of the big things for me, and I'm really going to watch this because college football, now I think 2 off weeks are going to help as far as teams staying healthier. But Bobby, do you ever see a time, and man, it's tough. We've played through this scenario. Could you ever see a time where Texas who's already knows they're in the playoff, the last game of the year, sits a couple of really key players to have them ready for the playoffs?
Not against A&M, baby.
Hey, we think
Oh,
that.
No.
We think that, but I'm just here to tell you what's more. I mean, I agree with you, but are we going to see some of these coaches at times maybe sit a guy to keep him healthy, knowing they could lose a game, but it doesn't crush your season? That's going to be very interesting to watch play out in college football. That's going to be, I think it's a great point, and I do think that's 100% true. I mean, just think about it. USC and Oregon just moved
out. The Texas or Texas A&M coach who does that and then loses the game, that game does so at their own peril.
I know. I get it.
I mean, I just want to – I hear you about 16-team playoff and all that stuff, Jerry. I mean, some things are worth more than a playoff.
Hey, I think here's another great.
You can still be playing for a bye in that playoff.
Yeah, I hear that. Here's another great comment, I think, because we're 5 days away. If Sark goes to Isaac Darden, if Sark goes 10-2 in his first head coaching stint in the SEC, I'd still be impressed. 100% agree with that. I know everybody's got the 12-0 dreams, right? And that's why we do this. But I 100% agree with that. If Texas went 10-2 this year, it's a tougher schedule. It's a more physical schedule. It's your first year in a new league. Now, you don't have a rough road schedule in year one. Oklahoma's got the watch out schedule. But if Texas goes 10-2, that's a hell of a year one in the SEC, considering you play at Michigan, then the SEC schedule for the first time.
I'd sign up for that ticket right now. Take me on that train. Put me in, coach. I'd be game for it. Mick Biscuit, let's finish with this one, Jerry. Just because it's always good to talk smack about OU and think about their eventual demise. If OU has a bad year, what are the chances Britt Venables gets fired? What does that do for recruiting? I think what we're finding more and more, Jerry, Texas fights A&M, OU, and LSU for about 3 to 5 players a year each. And some of those are the same players these days,
Right.
Jonah Williams was a guy that was looking at one point in time at A&M, LSU, and OU, right? And so all of those guys can have an impact, or any movement in those teams can have an impact on the actual recruiting situation. But I don't worry so much about OU as a recruiting competitor, maybe more so in North Texas. But overall, I see that going more the way of A&M and LSU right now for some reason or another. What do you agree with that? Is it A&M LSU more so than OU? Although look, Michael Fasusi just went to Oklahoma, so I mean, there's precedent there. I'm not denying that.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that with Texas moving to the SEC, especially, and the Sark way he built the staff, I totally agree with that. I do think there's going to be more Oklahoma A&M LSU battles in the future years, maybe versus Oklahoma. But now, maybe we say that. Maybe we're saying that right now because Texas has been kind of dominant in DFW. So. And the guys they've won those recruitments of Colin Simmons was Texas or LSU. So maybe some of those weren't, Oklahoma wasn't one of those teams. Maybe in a couple of years, it gets back to more Texas OU battles in DFW, where it's been trending a little bit away from that. Because Anthony Hill was a Texas flip from A&M. Obviously, Oklahoma finished third on him. But some of these recruitments in DFW it's been interesting, haven't always come down to Texas OU in the last 2 or 3 years since Sark's been in Austin. By the way, Oklahoma.
Wait a second. I want to ask you about OU's commitment list. Okay, who would Texas really want off of this group? Okay, that was in Texas. Michael Fasusi, they offered and wanted. Ryan Foji, they wanted. Right, he was a tackle. Torrey Blaylock, Texas did not offer. The running back out of a Atascocita. Texas liked Cortland Guillory, the safety at Spring, but didn't hyper prioritize him. I think that's a good way to put it, right? Texas did not offer Kevin Sperry, a quarter.
He's originally from Oklahoma.
Geyer.
Yeah, he's originally from Oklahoma.
That's four or five Texas. The wide receiver out of Lancaster, who I think is drastically underrated right now. Some people have him as 131st best player in the state of Texas.
No chance.
That's Malik Hawkins at Frisco Emerson,
and then that Michael Hawkins' son. He was going there.
Yeah, and then Owen Hollenbeck, an offensive lineman out of Melissa, Texas.
Really good player, undersized, but really good player. Or undersized. Yeah, Texas didn't offer.
Didn't push. Yeah. So. Yeah. Whereas you could look at LSU's list right now and guarantee that they'd be 7 to 8 that are in the state of Louisiana or Texas. That's my difference. Yeah. So I'm sorry. Go back to what you were saying. I'm sorry I wanted to go back.
You're fine. The schedule is just the schedule's really about Brent Venables' job security. The schedule's really tough. Again, I think the big thing for Oklahoma, they're going to be improved on defense. They're not going to be the 77th ranked defense again. If they are this year, they may go 6-6 against that schedule. They better be in the 40s defensively in year 3 under Brent Venables, because if not, what's the calling card? But I really think it's going to be interesting. Brent Venables needs Jackson Arnold to be a really good player. And that's asking a lot year 1 with that schedule as a starting quarterback, moving to the SEC. But when you let Dylan Gabriel walk, you put yourself into the corner with your quarterback. They need, if Jackson Arnold struggles, and then they're like, well, maybe we need to go to this freshman Michael Hawk, who, by the way, I think is going to be tremendous. But we need to make a move. That's an NIL. There's a lot going on with that. That you let the guy walk out the door that's the Heisman favorite on a team ranked 3 in the country for a guy because you didn't want the 5-star from Denton Geyer to transfer and walk out the door. You rolled the dice. So we'll see which they came up snake eyes or what. But he's kind of boxed himself in a little bit with that, to where his fan base might say, hold on now. That's when you start getting
I'm looking at LSU. these are guys that Texas definitely wanted. Zion Williams,
Yep.
Brandon Brown, Aiden
Yep.
Anding, Cade Phillip, Harlem Berry.
Yep.
There's already more.
DJ Pickett, Texas tried to get on campus multiple times. Yeah. I mean, so Texas offered Devin Harper.
Yeah. Lots of guys is my point.
Texas offered Keelan Moses brother. Yeah, there's a number of guys.
It's just it just is what it is. A&M, they got guys like Keody Armstrong that Texas like, DJ Sanders, Kobe Sellers, Kelshawn Johnson, just more. Jonte Newman was another one Texas like. So I just feel like it's headed that way. I'm not saying it's good or bad, by the way. I'm not saying that's necessarily good or bad. It's just different, and maybe one that we should take a look at. All right, that's going to do it for tonight's Talking Ball. We appreciate you guys very much. Thank you so much. Tomorrow will be 4 days away. Actually, and I want to promo this a little bit, guys. Tomorrow we have a special. We're changing up lunch with the coach this year. Last year we had last 2 years we had Brian Irwin on, the two-time state championship coach. That's been just a great friend of mine and coach in the Texas high school ranks. This year we're going to go with two coaches, and I think it's going to be really special. And I'm just hosting and pitching it to those two, Brian Irwin and Bob Shipley, two state championship coaches here on Texas Football Only. So I hope you guys like that tomorrow on with lunch with the coaches tomorrow around noon. Of course, we also have coffee and football tomorrow, as well as a number of other projects going on.
By the way, sometimes these guests fall through, but you want to watch coffee and football tomorrow.
Yep. Should be pretty good. Number 4 it is. All right, for Jerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. Thanks to our producer behind the scenes, Matthew Hutchison. This has been Talking Ball. Thanks again to John Donovan as well. And thanks to all of you. Good night. Hook 'em.